So as you see the focus question, why did Lincoln choose to emancipate the slaves in the South? That's a big vocabulary word we're going to look at this period. And then we have a do now. So with the do now, you could either just write the question and then answer it in like your own words, or you can look it up since you have the internet obviously near you. It's up to you. All right, we will start at 8:31, 8:32, though I want to wait for some more people to get in here. Hi, how are we doing? There's a focus question on the board. For those that just came in, you can copy that down. All right, give everyone 2 more minutes to get in here. Focus question is, why did Lincoln finally choose to emancipate the slaves in the South? Emancipate's a word you're probably not too familiar with, but you will understand it by the end of the day today, I believe. And then you have a do now. What does the word proclaim mean? What does it mean if someone proclaims something? And what does emancipate mean? All right, so we got 2 questions. We'll start in 2 minutes. Did it in my phone notes. Okay. 30 more seconds. Okay, let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. So the focus question today is why did Lincoln finally choose to emancipate the slaves in the South? So if you were doing the word proclaim, if I was to proclaim something, essentially proclaim means announce and declare officially and publicly. So what that means is I'm letting everyone know something. So a lot of times in history, you have these things called proclamations. And proclamations are basically something where usually an important person like a president is going to make a large announcement and let someone know that something has changed or something's officially and has been declared. Okay, so that's proclaim. Does anyone know? You can write in the chat if you're able to figure it out or already knew what it meant. Does anyone know what it means to emancipate something? What does it mean to emancipate something?
From what I searched up, it means to free, especially from
That's it. Just
from
right
legal
there.
or social. Yeah.
Free. All right, to free someone. Excellent. Okay, so emancipate means to free. All right, to set free. And this is an important thing because in today's lesson, we're going to deal with something called the Emancipation Proclamation. So let's just kind of put our previous lessons together and now with our new definitions, try and figure out what does this term, the Emancipation Proclamation, mean? So make a prediction. This is the Emancipation Proclamation on the right. The Emancipation Proclamation was a document signed by Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, during the middle of the Civil War, right in the middle, in 1863. What do you think it was based off of the name? So take a second, write it in the chat if you'd like. What do you think the Emancipation Proclamation was based off of the name and the definitions of those words? Let me help you out here. It's an announcement to...
Excuse interruption. Mr. Reichenbach, please report to room 317. Mr. Reichenbach, report to room 317.
Alejandro, excellent. It is an announcement to set people free. Excellent. Now, what specific people you think? Let's try and put it all together here. Excellent. The slaves. Okay, the slaves are going to be set free. Now, you say, Mr. Panio, this is really simple. You know, the slaves are going to be set free. The thing is, you're going to learn it's actually a lot more complicated than that. And that's what we're going to break down here. If you were to go around the school and ask, random people, any teachers, what document or what announcement freed the slaves in the United States, many people would say the Emancipation Proclamation. But the truth of the matter is, it's a lot more complicated than that. And you're going to see that today. Okay? So we're going to continue our notes here. All right? And we have this one slide to copy down. So if you're doing Cornell notes, on the left, you could write what was the Emancipation Proclamation. On the right, you're going to write down the notes that go alongside with it. Okay? You don't have to copy down what's in black. Just please copy down what's in red. Let's try and break down what this document was. All right? So I'm going to give everyone just 30 seconds without me talking so you can listen, so you can copy this down, and then I'll start talking over it. Okay, so a couple things. If you remember when we were doing the battles, graphic organizer, the last couple of weeks, the first battle or two, actually I'd say the first couple of battles were won by the Confederates. And 1861, 1862, it's more of the Confederates winning battles than the Unions winning battles. But after 1863, there's going to be a huge change in who's winning that war. And a lot of that has to do with this Emancipation Proclamation, okay? So let's break down a couple things. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed by Union President Abraham Lincoln in the middle of the war, 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation freed all slaves in the Confederate States. I'll say that again. The Emancipation Proclamation freed all slaves in the Confederate States. Now, that should say a couple things. In the North, in the Union, you had very few states that owned slaves. You had like 3 or 4 called border states that owned slaves, but many of them did not own slaves. In the Confederacy, pretty much all of the states owned slaves. So Abraham Lincoln's going to decide to free the slaves only in the Confederate States. So if you're in the Union, you can keep your slaves hypothetically, but if you're in the Confederacy, you have to get rid of them. All right. There's a major problem with this. Okay, and this is what a lot of people don't understand, but you guys as 8th graders will by the end of this lesson. The major problem was that Lincoln did not own, how do I say this? He was not the president of the Confederacy. He did not control the Confederacy. They had a separate guy, if you remember correctly, the name, it's okay if you don't. Their president in the Confederacy was Jefferson Davis. You see in this box here, Abraham Lincoln is not the president of the Confederacy. So this is a little bit of an interesting thing. Lincoln did not control the Confederacy at this time, so technically speaking, the Emancipation Proclamation did not actually free the slaves. So what in the world does this proclamation do? Okay? The reason why it doesn't, if you're having trouble following, well, he's the president, how come when he says something, isn't it something everyone has to follow? Technically, yes, but you need to remember something. Lincoln does not own the Confederacy. It's like Mr. Panio trying to tell your ELA teacher how to run her class. I run social studies, she runs ELA, right? Miss Garcia runs ELA. I don't tell her how to run her class. It's like Mr. Martinez trying to tell another school how to run their school. He doesn't run their school. He runs this school. He could tell our school how to operate, but he can't tell another school. Or it's like our president trying to tell another country like China how they're going to run their country. It doesn't work that way. All right. So essentially, this proclamation didn't actually do much in terms of freeing the slaves. Okay. But Lincoln is a really smart guy. I'm going to give everyone another 30 seconds to copy this down. If you're not done, you got to get it later. Lincoln is actually a really, really smart guy. He understands that the Confederacy is not going to listen to him. But he's being a little bit manipulative, and he wants to try and do something. And for us to figure out what he really wants to do, we actually have to read the text of the Emancipation Proclamation to figure it out. So what I did was, okay, if you're still following along with me, what I did was I took this Emancipation Proclamation, as you see here. I took this. I took the most important parts of it. And then what I did was, if you can now go to your Google Classroom. All right. On your Google Classroom, I'm going to share this tab instead. You have a document called the Emancipation Proclamation. All right. You guys are seeing it right now. All right. So guys, open up this document. I'll give everyone a little bit of time to do so. Open up this document, and then you're going to follow along with me as I go through it. All right, and it could be a little confusing to you because you'll have a reading on the left box, which is the Emancipation Proclamation, the actual words. It's not the easiest thing to read, so we're going to do a couple of these together so we can practice. And the next thing is the box to the right. Now, if you see a box that says don't do, that means you don't have to write anything in this box. Okay, I'll explain what you're writing in the box in a second, but you see here, you see don't do, you don't have to write anything. In this box, you see don't do, you don't have to write anything. In this box, you see don't do, you don't have to write anything. But then you'll see the last couple of boxes here, you have to write some stuff, and then you have a question at the bottom here that we have to try and answer as best we can. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to model how to try and do this. History readings and primary sources can be really tricky at times because they're written in a language that is not in like 2020 language, not like language you're used to. So some of these topics and some of these words can be very complicated. So we need to try and do our best to break down what these words mean. Now, you'll get to points where you don't know what certain things mean. The one benefit is you have Google, so you can search up a word. Let's say, again, proclamation. If we didn't know what that word means, we can look it up and try and break it down as best we can. Okay? So let's take a look at, I'm going to do the first two boxes with you. I'm just going to kind of read it, get into my mind a little bit of how I approach these things, and maybe it'll help you with some of the other ones. Okay? Yeah, Alejandro, like the olden day in writing is correct. I mean, they were very smart. They were very sophisticated people back in history, but they wrote a different way. You know, if we were to take the, some of the literature we have in 2020 and send it back into history and have them read it, they'd be a little confused too. So it is tricky. All right. So here's the actual text of the Emancipation Proclamation, signed on January 1st, 1863. That's when it goes into effect by President of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln. A proclamation. Whereas on the 22nd day of September, yeah, Alejandro, yeah, it is a tricky thing, but that's why we're going to try and work through it as best we can, because the actual words and actually reading these historical documents are really impactful and really important because it shapes the way our history is made. You know, the lessons you learn from this document have not only just like what you have to know for social studies class, has literally changed society. Right? If you notice, we're not fighting in a civil war anymore. When there isn't slavery, so some things have to change. So yeah, just trying to figure it out as best we can. And if you can't, that's where I'm here to help. All right? So whereas on the 22nd day of September in the year of our Lord, 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States containing, among other things, the following to wit. So all it says here is on September 22nd, in the year 1862, that's a date, Abraham Lincoln is going to give this proclamation, and this is what the proclamation says. All right? So now we have a box where we have to write what's called a stop, think, jot annotation. All it is an in your own words summary or like a sentence or two, basically kind of saying, what does this mean in our 2020 8th grade language? I want to try and break it down that way. So it breaks down, right? So it starts that on the first day of January in the year of our Lord, 1863. So the way I attack these long, old historical documents is I break it down sentence by sentence. Now you notice there's no periods, but anytime you hit a comma, I like to stop and kind of say, okay, what did this sentence mean? So what I see is on the first day of January, okay, so that means on January 1st, right? January 1st, and then it looks like another date, 1863. Okay. All persons held as slaves, okay, so any slaves, keep it going, or designated all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof thou shall be in rebellion. So I highlighted the word rebellion. If someone is in rebellion, are they with you or are they against you? If a teacher's rebelling, if a student's rebelling against a teacher, are they doing a good thing or are they doing a bad thing? Is rebellion, if someone's in rebellion, a good thing or a bad thing? Daniele, excellent. It is a bad thing. So any state that's in rebellion, so now we need to figure out which states are in rebellion. Is the Union in rebellion? Did they break away from the country or did the Confederacy? And when you think about it, the Confederacy broke away. They're the ones in rebellion. They're the ones being, quote unquote, bad. So on January 1st, 1863, any slaves, okay, that are in a part of a state that are in rebellion, so any slaves in a rebellion state, I'm going to put in parentheses what that is, a Confederate state. Okay, so we have this all taken care of. Against the United States shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free. Okay, that should be pretty straightforward. I know the thenceforward part is confusing, but thenceforward just means in the future, right? From this day on, sort of thing. They're going to be forever free. So on January 1st, 1863, any slaves in a rebellion state or a Confederate state is now free. Then it finishes, and the executive government of the United States will recognize and maintain the freedoms of such persons. Our executive government is basically the way our president and our federal government is now free, and our government will recognize them as free. So I took all of this, okay, and I broke it into this. Now, if the Emancipation Proclamation read like this on January 1st, 1863, any slaves in rebellion, state or Confederate state is now free and our government will recognize them as free. That's a lot more straightforward than what you read here. So that's kind of the challenge. Okay? Let's make it easy because we got about 15 minutes. Well, we got 21 minutes left in the period, but I'm going to give you 14 minutes to finish the rest of this as best you can. What you're going to do is you're going to skip the ones that say don't do. We could just kind of skip that over there, okay? Let's take a look at this box, and this box. I'm going to mute myself. You're now going to do the same thing as best you can on your own. I don't care if you write 2 words in here or if you write 30 words in here. You need to write something in the box and try and put it into your own words. You have Google, so if you don't know what, let's say, executive means, if you don't know what garrison forts are, just look them up quick. Okay, you could really do it really quick. It shouldn't be too crazy to figure out. Then you're going to write in the box, what does this mean in your own words? What does this part mean in your own words? And what does this part mean in your own words? In one of these 3 boxes, and a couple of these boxes, you will start to get more of a sense why Abraham Lincoln wrote the Emancipation Proclamation, because he knows that the South is not going to listen to him. If you have time, try this very last question. Why did Lincoln decide to create the Emancipation Proclamation? Okay? It wasn't, I'm just going to tell you right now, it wasn't to be a nice guy and free all the African-American slaves. There is a deeper reason for it. If you're able to figure it out, you could write that answer, but we will go over that in a little bit. So I will mute myself now. Look at the time. It's 8:51. We'll say 9:03. 12 minutes. Okay, try and have this done. We will go over it, and we have one final slide of notes to finish up. So no one's going anywhere, even if you're done. Okay? So I'm going to mute myself. Let me know if you have questions.
I didn't get to copy down.
That's okay. Just move on and do the work I said. We'll move on to that, okay? Okay, got about another 8 minutes. Just keep trying to put it into your own words. It's not easy, I get it, but it's a skill we got to definitely try and work on. All right, we got 5 more minutes left. All right, take 2 more minutes to work on this and we're coming back together. Okay, guys and girls, let's kind of quickly go over this. Basically, there's 3 major things I'm going to just kind of write down, per one thing per each box, basically. So if you have this, great. You don't have to write anything. If you don't have it, then you could just add to it. It should be really easy to figure out. So in this particular box here, he talks about how the government and the military will protect, and we're not going to call them slaves technically now. He's not going to call them slaves. He's going to call them the newly freed persons. Okay? Which is now just the slaves that Lincoln quote unquote freed. So now the African Americans. Okay, well, what are they going to be? The government and military will protect them. That's not so important. The next 2 things are really important and really change a lot of things. So what makes someone a slave besides being told what to do? When you work a job, like I am now, you get paid for working that job. What makes a slave sometimes, besides just the horrible treatment, is they do not get paid for their work. All right? So now they talk about here that in all cases when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. Labor means work. Wages means money, getting paid. Okay? So now African Americans will now get paid for their work. All right, this is another part of the Emancipation Proclamation that's really important. Okay? And the last thing here is really important as well. So prior to 1863, African Americans were not allowed to fight on side of the Union Army. All right? So what happens now is any such persons of suitable conditions will be received into the armed service of the United States. Another word for armed service is the military. All right? So African Americans can now join the Union Army. Right? So now we have a little bit more information. So now I'm going to go to the $1 million question to see if we can answer it. Okay, and we're going to come back to this here. So you have one more slide to write down. You can either write it here on this question, or if you'd like, you could write it on in your notebook. Either is fine. All right, so I'm going to share back to this slide here. Let me just make sure it does. I'm sharing back to here. Okay. So, Lincoln was a smart dude. This is what we talked about. He knew the South would not listen to him. He knew that when he made this Emancipation Proclamation, technically speaking, not all of these slaves will become free. He doesn't have the power to do so. So if we were in class right now, we would have a turn and talk, and then, I try and call on some people to figure it out. I know it's a little bit tough. Does anyone in the chat, I'll give everyone 30 seconds to a minute, does anyone want to guess in the chat why Lincoln decided to do this? It wasn't to be a nice guy. He did it for a different reason. Give everyone 30 seconds in the chat. If you don't know, it's okay. It is a tricky question.
I remember that in the oversimplified video, it said that other countries would interfere.
Edgar, that's a great, if you remember that part, that wasn't the main reason. He was saying possibly that the other countries, like in Europe and Britain, they would interfere on side of the South, but that wasn't the full reason why I did it. Really good try, though. Yeah, Cristalli, it's not really equality. He does it for another reason. Give everyone another 10 more seconds. No, it wasn't Ariel. It's a good guess, Ariel. It wasn't to actually anger the Confederates. He does it for a more general reason. All right. So this is the last thing you need to copy down. Why did Lincoln sign the Proclamation? Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation as a military strategy. Okay? Understand, right before this was proclamated, right before this was proclaimed and signed, the Union's losing the war. Okay, you saw in the beginning of the battles how they're losing a lot of battles. So Lincoln says, you know what? We have a large amount of African Americans that are pretty much the focus of this war. We're trying to fight for freedom and preserving the Union. Why don't we use them to help us win the war? So Lincoln, when he does the Emancipation Proclamation, he's not speaking to the Confederate leaders. He's not speaking to the Confederacy. He's talking to the African American slaves. Okay? He's talking to the free African Americans in the North that want to get rid of slavery. Before this, the key part is at the end of the Emancipation Proclamation, he knows the slaves will not be freed by the South. But maybe now, if you're a slave, you escape to the North and you go fight for the Union Army. Maybe you're in the North and you have siblings or you have family in the South and you want slavery to be done with. Now maybe you enlist and fight in the war. So all slaves and all African Americans heard that they would be free if the Union won the war. So what happens? 180,000 African American slaves enlisted in the army on the Union side, and they literally went to go fight for their freedom. And these soldiers were excellent fighters because they were fighting for their freedom. I mean, they were fighting for a cause they truly believed in, and they really helped. So this was signed January 1st, 1863. If you have time over the next day, go back to your battles documents where we went through the readings and tell me who wins all the battles after the 1863. Who wins in 1863? Who wins in 1864? Who wins in 1865? Okay? A lot of the time it's the Union because now they have a lot more soldiers fighting for them and you have a lot of inspired soldiers for them. Okay? So once this is copied down, ladies and gentlemen, you guys could start to log off. Please just make sure that you turn in the assignment so you get credit for it. All right? As long as the boxes were filled out and you attempted, that's all I cared about. Even if you were 100% wrong, that's okay. No, it's not an easy assignment. All right? You guys could start to log off. Lincoln was very smart in this maneuver, so you could see how it could really help everyone out. Now, I'm going to give everyone 10 more seconds to copy. I know Class 8D7 is coming in now. And Class 8D7, you guys could open the Google Doc that I shared before we get started. You guys aren't taking notes today. All right, 8B and 8D, have a great day.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Bye. Bye.
8D7, goodbye. Hello, 8D7, goodbye to the 8BE, 8DE group. All right, and let me stop.
Bye.
See you guys later. All right. Stop recording that.